Hey, Morningstar Smoggers. Pastor Matt here to give our weekend recap of what we went through this past weekend. Maybe you heard the message, but it's been a few days and you need a refresher, or maybe you weren't able to make it this weekend and you want the part three of this series, maybe for dummies, as they say. We began this series by talking about what does Jesus really say. And then last week, we discussed how following means, taking one small step with Christ. And this week we continued by learning kind of the fine print of following Jesus, you might say. Now, many of us may not even realize that there is fine print to following Jesus. But basically, what the fine print is that we can deny ourselves now and gain eternity, or we can lose ourselves later. Now, this was reinforced this week in our passage that comes from Mark chapter 8, verses 34 to 36, where it says that Jesus called the crowds and the disciples to him, and he said this. He said, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it." Then he continued in verse 36 by saying this, "For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" See, the brilliance of Jesus in this passage is that we all know what it means to save our life. We all know what it means to make lifestyle decisions and choices that will give us the best possibilities for the future. But eventually, regardless of the great choices that we make, we will lose our life and everything we acquired. Then Jesus unpacked this more by asking the question, for what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? If you imagine for a minute that you had everything you could ever want, from relationships to houses to cars to careers to status and fame, would it really be worth it to have all that stuff that you'll lose anyway and forfeit your soul? Of course not. Jesus brilliantly makes us realize in this passage that our soul is more important than our stuff. Now, the decision to follow Jesus isn't one that is kind of made once and then you just continue on. No, following Jesus is a lifestyle of choosing Christ over the contradicting claims of our culture. And often when we make these choices to follow, whether it's changing our career or giving more generously or ending a relationship or asking for forgiveness, it most likely costs us something. You see, our salvation is free, but when we choose to follow, that's not. And oftentimes when we make these decisions to follow, it does feel like a death because there's a loss. There is something that we give up for the sake of Christ. But there's also something truly inspiring about these decisions. Every time we choose to follow, it will become a defining moment in our lives. It will be something that we will look back upon, and it will instill confidence in God. Why? Because when we follow, we have proven to ourselves once again, not just who we are, but whose we are. Morningstar, I hope you have a great meeting together with your small groups. To kind of break the ice, I want to encourage you to go around your group right now at the beginning and share, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? That should lead you right in to this week's question number 1. Again, guys, have a great small group, and we'll see you in worship this weekend.